Hello everyone. Here are just some thoughts and words that I wanted to share with you all before the video starts. Now the first one was about I think it's really important to keep a diary or have somewhere to write down your thoughts and feelings and just whatever emotions you're having in the day, like just put them down, because I think it does a world of good for you when it's down. Because for me, if I have thoughts in my head, they really have a chance to turn toxic and develop negatively if I don't get them out or down. Like, you don't necessarily have to tell people if you don't want to. Just to get them down really helps. And the other thing I wanted to say that I thought of is that remember that you're in control of your own life. You'll only ever experience life as your subjective reality, and it can never be anyone else's. So make sure you don't make comparisons to other people's lives or their journeys, because it's not your journey and it never can be yours. So you have to live your movie and make your life the best it possibly can be. And it's not always going to look good, but that's okay. Like, even with myself, just remember that it's a journey and you're always going to have days where you struggle. Like, some days are going to be better and some days are going to be worse, but in the end it always works out. And that's going to lead to my other point, that you always have to be true to yourself and follow what's right deep down, because that intuition is your one true calling that you have to follow, and it's something that's unique and special and that no one else sees and no one else can follow. And my last closing thought is, it's okay to feel like alone and stuff. Like, it's okay not to feel good, and make sure that you express that in some way, like I said, like whether it's writing down or finding someone you can talk to. Like, don't pretend you're okay when you're not, because that's the true thing to you, and whatever action needs to be taken accordingly can only be done so in truth. So there's just some thoughts I wanted to share before I started this video. I'll probably share more stuff like this on my Instagram or upload videos on here, just with things that I think of that I know will help people. I want to help you, and I know I can. So yeah, with that out of the way, I'm just going to say too, make sure you check out the podcast, which is in the iTunes in the bottom, and make sure you check out my Instagram at Joe the Insomniak. Sorry if that all sounded unscripted, it literally was. But yeah, anyway, hope you all have a great day, and I love you all. Enjoy this video. I worked in forest maintenance and forest AG for a while. Some friends owned a big plot of land in the Rocky Mountains. A group of us, all guys 18 to 38 years of age, would gather together several times a year, go into the mountains for several days and clear the scrub brush, make fire breaks, and, when appropriate, cut a Christmas tree. This particular time, it was early spring, and our crew of 9, on 3 Gator 4-wheel drive vehicles, were at about 9,200 feet of elevation. There was a significant amount of snow on the ground. We had to put in long days of work and were heading to camp, until the old guy of the crew asked if we wanted to head to the slope. This was near a treeless slope, free of any large rocks, about 100 yards wide, with tracks of big trees on either side. We would go there and use one of the gators to tow a tube downhill in the snow. It was so much fun. We got to the slope, set up a fire pit, cracked open the whiskey, and started having our fun. We all took several turns being towed. Jeff was the new guy and the youngest, 20. We were giving him the craziest rides, swinging him close enough to the trees to make him scared, as an initiation almost. It's about 1 AM, pitch black, except for our dying fire, and it's slightly snowing. Now, it's not the smartest or safest of things we've ever done, but one of the most fun. Just as we were wrapping up one of the last rides and heading back to the camp, Jeff freaked out. He was stumbling over his words and can't express himself clearly, but finally manages to get a word out. And he says, about 3/4 of the way down, he saw a man standing a few yards into the woods. He's wearing a trapper's hat, one of those with the flip down ear things like in Fargo, and a plain mackinaw. We're all a bit skeptical, I mean, we're on a big plot of private land, at elevation and in somewhat hostile weather, but we took the rifles off the gators and got our flashlights and gave it a look. We didn't find anything, not even footprints. We chalked it up to an experience, spooky environment, and of course whiskey, and headed back to camp about 1/8 of a mile away. Jeff doesn't sleep though. He's convinced he saw someone. The next morning, we drove the gators to the house on the property, got in our trucks and headed into the town nearby for breakfast. We had our breakfast and were heading back to the property to say our goodbyes and go our separate ways. As we neared the intersection of the public dirt road and the private dirt drive to the houses, we find there's several police cars and an ambulance. We stopped to talk to the police, who informed us the closest neighbours had found a body in the ditches and were heading down the mountain. The police had followed in reverse footprints up the hill to the slope across to where a neighbourhood's property was. They asked us if we knew anything, and of course we said about the man. Sure enough, it was him. Self-inflicted gunshot, probably just a few minutes after we encountered him. We still don't know what he wanted, or if he was a danger to us, or if we could have helped. Poor Jeff got his whiskey and meals paid for the next few weeks, but he still gets guff about it to this day. So let's begin. So how my friend's group works is we have a little circle of people we hang around with most often, but for big events or bonfires or something similar, we expand and a couple different friends join in with our group. Ben is a part of one of these extended friend groups. He is someone who always posts different and interesting things, who always has something to say. I've gotten along with him really well. We always end up chatting. I've always found him to be a unique individual. Ben started going to my local college last year. He shot me a Snapchat basically saying, "Hey, all my friends went to different schools, and the only person I've spoken to from my area is actually my now ex-girlfriend. I was wondering if you wanted to go to get a group together and hang out, because I'd like to have some new friends around." It was actually a really nice message, because with the course I'm in, I don't make many friends, and all my close friends are spread out now too, so I said sure. The hangout was initially supposed to be one of my friends, him and one of his friends. It was a day after class and I just got home. He told me he was going to take a quick nap before we all headed out. When he wakes up, he tells me it's now too late and he has other plans he forgot about. I mean, that's totally fine. I wasn't upset about it. I cancelled with my friends so I can just sit down and do some homework. He then texts me a few hours later. Now, I didn't give him my number, so how the hell did he get it? Telling me his other plans got cancelled and he was now available again, wondering if I still wanted to do something. I said that my friend was now out of city, and he said that he texted his friends but they didn't answer. He decided to pick me up and go for a drive, and just chat. Normal enough, I guess. Ben gets to my house at around 10. I go and hop into his car and he speeds off. Oddly enough, he's talking in an accented voice, kinda like Jamaican or something similar. I thought he was just being goofy, so played along. Sometimes I would answer back in the accent, but then I started to think it was weird how he wasn't speaking in his own voice at all. He was driving like a maniac too, telling me how he was drinking earlier because he thought he was going to a party. I said if he was drinking and driving, but he said he only had a few sips. I know I probably should have gotten out of the car then, but now we're flying down the highway and I'm scared. He now starts ranting about his ex, telling me that there were indefinitely and trust issues on his end, and he couldn't tell me what they were because he didn't want me to think bad of him. He told me that he was still gonna marry this girl and have her children. He ranted about her and got onto tangents and literally starts to scream. I'm worried he's on drugs too now. Eventually we arrive at my college, a half-hour to 40-minute drive away in another city. He says that we should get out of the car. I'm already scared and my phone is dying, so I listen to what he says. At this point, I'm literally thinking he's gonna kill me. He took me for a walk through the light woods, and then started to make sounds like a creature. He would make like demon noises or grudges. He would also walk like a creature, morphing his body into weird creepy movements. I requested for us to go home because I'm terrified. When we get back in the car and start our drive home, he pulls out a pipe and smokes something. I told him that he shouldn't do that, but he doesn't listen, now beginning to yell at me. He starts back on his tangents about life again. He pulls over and starts doing some jumping kicks. Now my phone's dead. He gets back in the car and puts on his favourite song. This song begins slow and then picks up a little later. It's like a 4-minute song. He begins to scream along to the lyrics and smash the windows and dashboard with his hands, stomping his feet. I've seen some passionate people, but not like this. This is psychotic. Ben swerves all around the road until he gets to my home. He then turns around and says, "Hey, I know it's late, but I want to get it on," in the most crazy tone I've ever heard. I say, "No, I'm good," and he reaches in for the back to try and get something. But I got out of the car and booked it to my house. I lock the door and run into the bedroom. I'm worried he's going to break in. Now this might not sound as terrifying as it was to me in that moment, but I'm now shaking out of pure fear. I don't know if he was on drugs or not, or if he has a split personality disorder or something, but I'm pretty sure he was going to try and kill me. This just happened a few hours ago. I've called and reported it to the police and I'm home safely, but I guess I'm still in shock. Could do with putting it down because it's crazy. Now I finished work early today, so decided to go for a run. I set out at around 4:30 and decided on my usual route, which crosses many roads and it's not very practical. So I decided to take an alternative route along a canal towpath and some pathways through the woods that I know are going to be less busy for me. Everything was going well. I was pushing myself steadily until I got to a pathway on the way back at around the 6-kilometer mark. It is a long straight path with a canal on the left side, and on the right there's wasteland where some factories used to be, but they're mostly been demolished now. It's been left abandoned for as long as I can remember, and is overgrown with trees and weeds, but there's odd bits of old factory there for some reason which haven't been demolished. As I got level with one part of the factory, which still had some old metal fire escape sets attached to it, I noticed a rough-looking guy sat on there with his legs hanging down. He jumped to his feet when he saw me coming and shouted something, but I don't know what he said. As I came level to where he was, I heard him say, "Wait, now can you help me find my phone?" He said this while he was running down the steps, and I stopped as I got level with the bottom, and he's only a few feet away from me now. There's a really old rusty iron fence between us with metal bars that have spikes at the top like you sometimes see around old churches and stuff. He asked me if I'd like to help him find his phone again, saying, "Oh, I dropped it somewhere nearby. Could you ring it for me so I can listen?" I felt I couldn't exactly refuse as my phone is strapped to my arm, so I said he could tell me the number. I took my phone off my arm, unlocked it. He blurted out a phone number that said, "It's far too fast," and it didn't begin with an 07, which began to make me feel like something was off. Although I'm beginning to suspect that something is off at this point, I'm not too worried. I'm in pretty good shape, and I had a big size and weight advantage over him, plus there's a fence. He didn't seem in very good physical shape, and seemed like he might be homeless even. I figured if he was trying to mug me for my phone, his only chance would be if he pulled out a knife, so I made sure to stay a good distance away from him from the fence, keeping my eye on him and where his hands are. So I told him I didn't catch any of the numbers he gave me because they're too quick, and I don't remember 07 in the beginning. Now, I entered 7 numbers, and then he starts looking around saying, "I can hear it. Come and help me," as he looks at the ground. I was about to say that I hadn't even finished dialing when a much larger guy appeared from behind a section of wall to my right. He was really scruffy looking, and from the look in his eyes, he's off his head or on drugs. He came out saying he could hear the phone ringing over towards him and beckon me to come through a gap in the fence and help look. The white guy then said, "It's ringing, yeah?" And I told him it was, even though I hadn't dialed the last 3 digits. And now, I'm certain they're trying to lure me in. After 2 or 3 times of them both beckoning for me to come, always insisting they can hear it, I heard the other guy say, "Yeah, he's not gonna fall for it." He said it in a hushed way, as he thought I wouldn't be able to hear him out in the middle of nowhere, but I clearly heard him. The white guy then started acting aggressive, punching a tree, telling me he needed his phone badly and his whole life was on the line and it's really important. While he was punching the tree and ranting, the other guy taking a few steps away, and this means I can't watch both of them at the same time. It was after 5 PM by this point and gotten dark real quick, making it all the more unsettling. I noticed there's a gap in the fence where some of the bars had been removed from, and the guy's head in there. I decided to get the hell out of there now. Neither of them said anything as I ran away, which makes me think sure they had malicious intentions. If they genuinely lost their phones, they wouldn't be desperate for me to come. Now after sprinting for a good minute, I looked to see if they're chasing me, and they both stood on the path where the fence is, just watching. I continued running, but kept looking back every few seconds until I'm out of sight. It's at this point I got off the canal path and onto the roads. The person I spoke to on the phone to report it with took my details and descriptions, but he said realistically there's nothing they can do because no crime was committed, but it's going to be investigated. Ah, great. I really hate to think of what would have happened if I was actually injured or out of shape, because if I couldn't run, they could have easily overpowered me having 2 of them there, and God knows if there was actually more of them. Especially being in the middle of nowhere, no one would have been able to help me. I hate the fact that I hadn't dialed the number, and they were agreeing that they could hear the phone. Obviously making it up. I haven't really went jogging that way since, and I don't ever plan on doing it again. I just pray to God that they never caught anyone, and they actually do get caught themselves. I was coming back from a late night walk once. It was almost midnight. I left my apartment a couple of hours earlier to clear my head, and I was feeling better, so decided to come back. It was pitch black outside, no moonlight, so I decided to cut through campus so I can walk by streetlights. I had earbuds in blasting music, but I got this sudden sick feeling in my stomach, like it was twisting. My entire body felt ice cold, so I took out my earbuds, stopped walking, and looked around. I was on the sidewalk, about 50 meters from the left turn to change streets. I looked to my right across the other side. I now see something or someone just roll down this hill out of the woods. They landed on the sidewalk parallel to me and stood up, just staring. You know that feeling when you get burned? That feeling shot through my entire body, and before I knew it, I was sprinting towards the street to the left away from whatever that was. I looked behind me once, and they're now on my side of the street, sprinting towards me. Their legs were running normally, but they were letting their arms flop around as they ran. It was the creepiest thing I've seen in my life. I tripped and fell, hearing the footsteps gaining on me. I pulled out of the fall and kept going. Got to a parking lot and hid under a car. I literally waited there for hours until I was certain they were gone. It's literally the scariest thing that's ever happened. This happened well over 10 years ago, so I'm going to try my very best to recount what happened. One of my childhood homes had a balcony that was attached to both my mother's bedroom and mine via big double glass doors in each of our rooms. Next to the balcony are 2 trees, one that I often climbed up and down from the balcony. This balcony faced out to the street. One night when I was about 13, my brother and mother weren't home. I was reading in bed with a very dim light. Now we're out in the middle of nowhere, and I heard what sounded like something moving in one of the trees outside. But this didn't worry me, as possums and bats are common. Now I had a thin curtain across the glass door that separated my room and the balcony. As mentioned previously, the doors faced outwards down the street where the street lamp was. Shortly after I heard the rustling noises, I see a shadow slowly moving past the doors, at which point I immediately turned off my reading light and froze like a deer in headlights. The shadow is tall, so it wasn't one of the neighbourhood kids I'm friends with, and it wasn't as tall my 5-foot mum. The person moved slowly, creeping as though they're trying not to be noticed. They wouldn't likely be able to see into my room, but I could see them thanks to the streetlights behind them creating a dark silhouette. They moved past my doors out of sight. I sat there unable to move or even think about what happened. That is, until I heard another sound, the sound of someone trying to open a glass door. My mum's doors to the balcony. I don't know if she had locked them or not, but I wasn't taking chances. I moved as quickly and as silently as I could to my bedroom door, locking it. I listened for what felt like an eternity, and I can hear there jiggling the doorknob. But it sounded like the doors aren't opening. I feel relieved. Surely they can't get in. All I have to do is wait for them to leave now, right? Well, I heard light footsteps move back along the balcony to my set of glass doors until I saw the shadow stop directly in front of them. Again I froze. He couldn't see me. He couldn't know I saw him. I saw a shadow of a hand reach up to my door handle, and my heart stopped. Had I actually locked the doors today? Was this a wonder I had forgotten? The seconds leading up to him grabbing the handle felt like an eternity, but thankfully, when this person tried to open the door, it doesn't open. It was locked. I sighed such a sigh of relief. I was worried he heard it. After this, he begins pacing the length of the balcony. I didn't have a mobile phone as my mum taught me that I was too young to have one now, and the landline's at the other end of the house and to use that. But I'm too scared to take my eyes off this person, even to call for help. I silently cry tears as I patiently wait and pray for him to leave. I heard him stop moving now. He then said, "I could just break the glass, you know, and there's nothing you could do." Before I can even process this, I saw car headlights turn around the corner of my street and then stop at the gate of our property. My mum's home. The person on the balcony moves out of sight and I hear a loud thump as they jump off. When my mum come inside, I was hysterical and was blaring out everything incoherently, trying to explain what happened. Eventually, I got the message across and she calls the police, but they never found anyone. But a neighbour did report a truck in the street that matches the description of the truck that's been reported recently for an attempted child abduction nearby my school a block away. Since I walked that short distance daily, the police suspected that he's followed me and tracked me down and knew I was home alone. I'm a 28-year-old, but I was about 5 years old when this happened, and my mum and I lived in this duplex that was off a main road and kind of in a wooded area. We lived on one side, and the other side had a woman and her son there. He was studying to be a teacher. My mum had me young, so she's about 25, and this guy's in his early 20s. He would often come talk to my mum. My mum said he would ask a lot of questions about me, and asked if I was alright, but said that he wanted to take me for a walk in the woods. My mum always declined. My mum worked in the operating theatre at the local hospital and was on call a lot on most of the weekends. I stayed at my grandma's house often as a result. One night while I was at my grandma's house, my mum was home sleeping. She woke up in the middle of the night and said that she doesn't remember if she heard something or felt someone in her room, but she woke up. She could literally see feet sticking out at the end of her bed. She grabbed her bed lamp, which was next to her, to hit the intruder, when a neighbour yelled her name and said his name. He couldn't explain why he was naked and only wearing socks, but he begged my mum not to tell his mother about it. And of course my mum calls the cops. So she ended up going to court and making a victim impact statement against this guy because she's terrified that he'd be a teacher and around children. She says she's pretty sure he was there for me that night and was so happy that nothing happened. We ended up moving away immediately after. This happened in the Amazons, in the border between Brazil and Peru. The jungle is an amazing place to live. Everyone knew each other, and I had a big group of friends of different ages. The only horrible part of the Amazon is the existence of terrorist groups who try and control the region. I was 7 when this happened. Every kid on the village knew we had freedom to go anywhere, as long as it's not close to the terrorists, and that we could never leave the village at night. My parents taught me since I was very little how to hide in case anything happens and how to run when things get dangerous. I remember all adults of the village were celebrating something. I think it was an Amazonian party like Halloween. I remembered my mum painting her face in a tribal way, and all the children went together to a house to stay and have fun. The eldest girl in charge was 17, and as soon as our parents left us, she ignores us to be with her friends. Our closest group consisted of 6 children. I was one of the youngest, and we all listened to the most adventurous one, Leon, who's 14. Whatever Leon said, we followed, because he was fun, always making challenges, and he knew how to take care of us. Yes, despite him being reckless, he's our friend. We loved him and knew he would never abandon us if anything happened. After playing soccer and eating, the 6 of us become bored. Carla, one of the 6, had the idea to dress up like her parents do, with tribal makeup and dresses. We agree, and soon we're all dressed up like kids who lived in the villages of the deepest regions of the Amazon. I remembered us playing around until Leon said to, and I quote, "Let's explore the Amazon and find a hidden treasure." We all cheered and agreed to leave. It was easy to escape, since the girl who's supposed to be looking after us has left. Leon manages to find a lantern and a big boat that's big enough for 6 of us to get in. Now, we didn't care, so we agreed to do it. It's midnight, and we're just dressed up, splashing water everywhere trying to find imaginary treasure. No phones, no adults, just a jungle and us, in its purest form. Everything seemed like perfection, until we hear people calling, "Who's there?" And we saw a lighted boat approaching, and quickly, Leon drops the lantern and says, "Get down now." It's still one of the most scary moments of my life. I remember clearly how we all lay on our bellies, grabbing our hands and not even daring to breathe. "Stop hiding, I see you," a voice said as a guy illuminated our boat. We stood up, and I saw 4 men with guns. They laugh and say they're all children. Leon put himself in front and says that we're in a hurry because our parents are expecting us home. The guy with a red bandana laughs and says, "Little kids should not be here alone at night. You could disappear in the jungle and no one will find you." I was scared, and Carla is too and starts crying. Now they left us. I remember all of us hugging each other and sailing as fast as we can. Once we got home, we entered the house and closed all the doors and windows. We all slept together on the floor, but before that, we agreed not to tell anyone of what happened. Years later, I understood why they left us. They thought we were kids from the local tribe. We had no value to them. If they had known we were dressed up and were from the village, I probably wouldn't be saying this story now. When I was 17, I was driving home from a friend's house after a movie marathon. It was around 1 AM when I left, and a decent drive. Not quite sure why, but halfway through, my gas light came on. I had a few creepy catcall experiences at gas stations, and I'm a little paranoid stopping that late in the middle of nowhere, as I'm a 110-pound teenage girl. In the end, I really think if I wasn't so cautious, I would have been killed or kidnapped. The first gas station I came across is well lit, in a pretty open space. I drove up to the pump and looked around my car mirrors before getting out. As I start pumping gas, this normal looking guy comes out of the gas station shop and starts smoking a cigarette. The pump kept clicking off and not working, so I started messing with it trying to get it to pump. This guy starts watching me laughing. I'm assuming he was just laughing to himself watching a teenage girl trying to pump gas. After getting maybe 1/4 of a gallon, I gave up and moved to a new pump. Now by this point, if I didn't do absolutely everything I did, I would have been screwed. When I got back into my car, I lock my doors. Just to drive to the other pump, I check all my mirrors before getting out or shutting off my car again. Now I'm in an old 90s Beetle that didn't always start right away. That's when I saw the guy walking up to my car. He was smiling, walking up to the driver's side window, not wanting me next to him. I decide to roll down the window. He paused for a moment, smiling to himself, walking to the other side. He stuck his head all the way inside, saying, "Hey, I know this seems weird, but I promise I'm not creepy. My car broke down, and I need a ride. It's a mile away." "I'm sorry, I don't know you." "Oh no, I get it. I thought it was pretty weird walking up here, but it's only half a mile up the road. I'm totally stranded. I wish I could help you, but I don't know you." "Yeah, I got you. If you had a truck or something, I'd offer to ride in the back." "Sorry," I say, and all of a sudden, he looks mad. He yanks on the door, but it's locked. He then tries to reach in frantically, but my car's running, and I slam it into first and peel out of there as he tries desperately to open the door. The car driving off slams it shut, and I sped off. I called the police after I got away. They looked at the gas station cameras, and right after I left, he gets straight into his red SUV and drove off. Now, if I hadn't locked my doors a second time, he would have got me. If I let him come to the driver's window, he would have grabbed me. If I shut my car off, I wouldn't have been able to drive off in time. If I didn't double check my mirrors, I would have been outside my car when he come up. So before I start, I have to explain the job I worked at. It was a security job where I worked overnights, usually from 8 to 8. Now, it was a rather large property I had to watch, which consisted of me driving around in a company vehicle through the night, making sure there was no trespassers or anything out of the ordinary. Now, usually there never was, and nothing out of the ordinary would happen. Now, I would always listen to podcasts while driving around. Now, one night at about 3 to 4 a.m, I was driving and come to an abandoned parking lot near a forest. This parking lot is part of the property I have to watch. This parking lot is on a road that's kind of out of the way. It's where an old business used to be but got torn down. Anyway, it's surrounded by trees. The entrances are kind of blocked off by some branches, so you have to drive through them. As you can imagine, there's no street lights or parking lot or anything adjacent, so as usual, I take out my flashlight as I come over a branch. I lower my window and shine my flashlight through the parking lot and see nothing. As I start to turn into the corner, I can see something out of my eye. There's a shadowy figure waving its hands. I stop the truck. The figure comes closer waving its hands. I move my flashlight and shine it on the figure. It's a man probably in his late 20s, regular build, scruffy with a beard. I crack my passenger window open and say, "What are you doing?" The man tells me that he needs help and begins to walk to my side. I then shine my light. He keeps saying he needs help and begins coming closer. I yell at him to stop. He's 5 feet from my truck now, and I don't want him coming any closer. I ask him what he needs help with. As I can best remember, he says, "Hey man, can you help me out? I've lost something over here and need your help." So then I ask what. He says his phone, but not to be rude, he looks like some kind of addict, not likely to be with a phone. I tell him maybe I could help him, but that's where things get strange. He tells me, "Is it okay if I use your phone?" Obviously I say no. I'm not going to give it to some stranger at 3 a.m, so I tell him, "Just call my phone." So I ask him for his number. He kind of pauses and then says, "No. All you have to do is get out of your car and I'll use it. It's just by the brush. Just follow me." I look at him confused as he slurs his words. "Just follow me to the bush," he says again. Now, I've watched enough shows to know that this isn't going to end well. We're in the middle of nowhere, next to the forest, and I won't see another person until 7 a.m. The last thing I want to do is give my cell phone to some stranger. I get nervous and in a loud voice tell him, "Leave, I'm calling the cops." And he gets frustrated and says, "No, that's okay," before sprinting into the darkness. I never see him again. When I was about 14, I used to love exploring the forest around my house near where I lived. I felt like I could truly find tranquility when doing so. Now, on one summer's evening, I set off like normal, having only a bottle of water and my small radio for company. Now, I really needed to get out to clear my mind because I had a lot going on, and I couldn't really see things getting better. Basically, I was really stressed. As I was walking, I lit up a cigarette and started to clear my mind. The whole time though, I had the feeling I was being watched and I just couldn't shake it. I continue walking when I see a strange rock formation. Now I'm not saying I'm an outdoors person or hunting expert, but it looked disturbed, like someone had been there before. I was curious, so ventured down. As I get closer, I suddenly feel the need to just stop and see what's in the leaves in front of me. Now they look disturbed in a weird way, and I'm worried there's an animal trap there. I crouch down and pick up rocks and begin throwing them towards where the trap is. I then hear the loudest sound I've ever heard in my life, and a rope whips up, empty. A trap's been set up to capture someone in a large net. Needless to say, I have a heart attack and can't move. What's worse is I hear someone swear. At first I think it's just my voice in my head talking to me, but then to my horror, I see someone in a ghillie suit moving off in the distance. I had dropped my radio and bolted out of there. The static sound from the radio makes me really feel like I'm in a horror film as I'm running. I managed to make it home and desperately try and tell my mum and dad what happened, but they don't believe me. They're just more angry that I left the radio behind. And to this day, I still can't bring myself to go into the woods.